My name is Ryan Doze, and I am a huge fan of Marvel's mighty Thor. He is by far my favorite superhero, and he has been for a long time. But I noticed when I looked out on the podcast landscape, nobody was doing a show about this awesome character who has existed in Marvel Comics for almost 50 years. So I thought to myself, why not me? That's why I started Across the Bifrost to explore the world of Marvel's mighty Thor. Today on the show, we are going to break down 2 issues of some comics that have been around for 48 years. We're going to look at issues 97 and 98 of Journey into Mystery. We're going to find out why Thor hates lava and what he thinks about snakes. So jump aboard the Rainbow Bridge and let's check out some comics.
Whoever holds this hammer, if it be worthy, shall possess the power of Thor.
Okay, here we go, everybody. Journey into Mystery 97. This issue is entitled The Lava Man. Mighty Thor faces a moltenous foe for the first time. This issue came out in October of 1963, so we're nearing the end of Thor's second year. This issue's synopsis goes like this. Just a real quick introduction to this issue, what we can expect from this story. It says, the Lava Man has claimed New York City as the domain of the Lava Tribe, where he shall rule as their king, but that doesn't sit right with the Thunder God, so he heads to intervene. So we get really a brief description of the B storyline. Now you might think, why did you call that the B storyline? That sounds like it's going to be the big conflict of the issue. I would submit that it's the B storyline because a lot of this issue is devoted to Thor and Jane's relationship. The breakdown of the relationship, the not so obvious or admitted relationship between Don Blake and Jane Foster. You'll see what I mean when we get into the page-by-page breakdown of this issue. So this week I wanted to give you a snapshot of what was happening in Marvel this month. What else was going on as this comic was coming out in October of 1963. So here's 3 issues that I just thought we'd spotlight. And I'd tell you that what's going on in these other books. First off, the Fantastic Four issue 19 came out, and in this issue, the Fantastic Four face off against Rama Tut, who is he's listed as the Pharaoh from the future. Fans might better know him as Nathaniel Richards, who, if you don't know who Nathaniel Richards is, you might know Kang the Conqueror. Rama Tut is one of the first incarnations of the Nathaniel Richards, Kang the Conqueror character, so he shows up here in Fantastic Four number 19. Also, in Tales of Suspense, number 49, Iron Man battles the Crimson Dynamo, his Soviet Union foe, for the first time in that issue. And then in Amazing Spider-Man number 5, Spider-Man fights Doctor Doom from the Fantastic Four. So, a lot of good battles going on this month in Marvel Comics. In this issue of Journey into Mystery, number 97, we get some first appearances. We get the first appearance of the Lava Men. This main Lava Man that we're going to interact with today in this issue of Thor is later on called Molto. He gets that name later on in Avengers number 5, where the Lava Men show up to fight the Avengers. This comic is written by Stan Lee. It's plotted by him due to the Marvel method. It was really a co-creation with Jack Kirby, who was the penciler on this issue. It was inked by Don Heck, and the letterer was Artie Simic. Just some key notes about this issue of Journey into Mystery. It plays a pivotal role in the widening of Thor's world, as this podcast exists to explore Thor's world, not just Thor himself, but Asgard and the 9 realms and other characters that are essential to getting to know Thor's world and his universe. This issue is a big deal because it begins a series of backup stories in Journey into Mystery called The Tales of Asgard. So in The Tales of Asgard, we get reinterpretations of Norse mythological figures that go along with Thor. We see introductions to Bor, the father of Odin. We get to see more about Odin, some of the villains in Thor's world like Surtur and Ymir, the frost giant, the ice giants, and we get to go to different parts of the Nine Realms like Jotunheim, Muspelheim, and we are introduced to the concept of Yggdrasil, the world tree, the connection that each of these 9 realms has with each other that is depicted in this giant tree called Yggdrasil. The Tales of Asgard series really expounded on all those different things, and it fleshed out parts of Thor's world that maybe weren't big enough or important enough to focus on in a whole issue of Thor, but they could give 4 or 5 pages at the end of a Journey into Mystery comic so that people could just learn more about this world. I like to think of it this way. Tales of Asgard is kind of like what I am envisioning doing with this show. I want to expound and go into the corners of Thor's world for those of you that are Thor fans. Maybe you haven't found that medium that exists for you where Thor is the focal point and you want to learn more about your favorite character. That's what I hope this podcast is for you. Just like when Stan Lee and Jack Kirby did the Tales of Asgard, they envisioned that being the purpose of that little side series, that they would flesh out all the parts of Asgard and the 9 realms. So that is an important reason why this issue is important. It's a big deal in the grand scheme of Thor comics and his history. So we jump into the issue, Journey into Mystery 97. It's listed on the cover as a super special issue. And we get to see on the cover the lava man coming out of the volcano, Thor charging into battle against him. The first few pages, we're shown this interaction that Thor has with a pilot whose plane has malfunctioned. He saves the pilot, and we're kind of just given like an opening action sequence to introduce ourselves to Thor because, again, this comic is not related to the previous one in an overt way. It's not like a part 1 or part 2. So you didn't really have to have last issue of Journey into Mystery to understand the story. So they kind of show you a little bit of action to start off and really get to see Thor flex his powers and what he's capable of in these first few pages. Then we come to really some important pages in the relationship of Don Blake and Jane Foster. Jane has had enough with Thor. He's had enough. Well, she doesn't know. Sorry. I keep getting Thor and Don Blake mixed up because Jane is in love with Thor. Don Blake is in love with Jane Foster, and Jane has kind of had it up to her ears with Don Blake. He is not assertive enough. He's not going to go after her in the way that she would find appealing. And Odin has continually told Thor / Don Blake that he's not going to allow him to end up with a mortal. So Thor and Don Blake are in this between a rock and a hard place when it comes to Jane Foster, and Jane has had enough. She walks out on Don Blake and she decides she's going to go work for a different doctor. We see on the streets as Thor is walking around as Don Blake, he's walking around and just contemplating what's going on. And we find out that there is a lava monster, a lava man, coming close to the city. Throughout this issue, what I find kind of interesting is how the newspaper that all the people of the city are reading, that we get to see in these little snapshots into, the current events of the day, the newspaper keeps changing throughout the day. To my knowledge, like this adventure only takes place in one day, but the newspaper keeps changing. So very cutting edge, like current events updates when it comes to the paper. They're handing out tons of different papers throughout the day. We see that Loki has his hands in this diabolical scheme that the lava man has emerged from the volcano. It's actually because of Loki that the lava man has emerged, and he's wreaking havoc on New York City. We see Don Blake after he's gone on this little walk to clear his head out on the streets. He comes back, and she's ready to go. She's ready to leave, and she does, with a Dr. Andrews. this guy, we get to see a little bit more about him at the end, but he is going to take Jane from Don as his nurse and his assistant. He's going to take her away because Jane, again, she's had it up to here with Don's indecisiveness. And what we know as the readers is that Don can't tell her how he feels because of Odin's threat that he won't let Thor end up with a mortal. Now, finally, we get to see the Lava Man. We get to jump into some action for this issue, and we see the Lava Man fighting against the army. He melts all their weapons, and they don't know what to do. Luckily, the mighty Thor is nearby, and he starts his combat with the Lava Man. They have this battle that goes underground. It goes, through pipes and corridors underground, and Mjolnir is used to make the Lava Man resurface, and he's fighting Thor, and finally the Lava Man gets an advantage on Thor. He's able to cover him in molten rock, and he's able to harden it around him so that Thor can't escape. Well, we know Thor's a little bit stronger than that, so he's able to shake his arms just powerfully enough where he breaks out of the molten lava, and he's free again. This leads to the climax of the battle where Thor spins the hammer so fast that he doesn't have to touch the molten lava that this monster is made of, and he's able to fling the monster back into the volcano where he came from, and he covers up the top of the volcano so that the lava monster cannot escape again. We get to the end of the issue, and this is where the Don Blake, Jane Foster love story kind of reaches a down moment, a decisive moment where Jane is back at the office with Dr. Andrews. Dr. Andrews is in Dr. Blake's office stealing his assistant. Kind of a jerk move, man. And he takes Jane, and Jane gives a little bit of a parting shot to Don Blake on the last page, where she says, "It's too late for that now." For the groveling and the pleading that Don Blake wants to do. She says, "It's too late now. I've waited, hoping that you'd return, hoping that finally you would say the thing that I've longed to hear. But while the city was threatened by the Lava Man, you didn't even care enough to come and find me." Little does she know that Don was saving her indirectly the entire time as he turned into Thor. She doesn't care. She's done. She's out of here. And we leave Don in this issue on a very sober, lonely moment. He's staring out the window, and he says that of all the people on the earth, he's the mightiest God, he's the mightiest hero, and yet he can't obtain the one thing he truly wants, which is the love of Jane Foster. So even heroes, I think kind of a worthy takeaway of this is sometimes even when we do the right thing, we may still lose something in the process. That when we make a good decision, it can still not end up entirely right for us. Sometimes we have to choose between what is good and what is great. So obviously, Thor saving the city is great. And he lost out in this issue on something good, which is the relationship he had with Jane Foster. So that is Journey into Mystery number 97. Kind of a cool little simple story of Thor fighting a lava monster. Like really in comics, there doesn't get more plain and kind of just simple than hero fights nemesis or a menace or a monster. It's a really simple story to tell, and it kind of gives an action-packed backdrop to really what I believe the A story is in that issue, bleeding over into the next issue of Jane and Don's falling out. So we jump on to Journey into Mystery number 98. This issue is entitled Challenged by the Human Cobra. So not a big, huge hulking menace like the Lava Man was. We're going to fight a different type of Thor villain in this issue. This issue came out in November of 1963. Again, we're getting really close to the end of 1963. The synopsis on Marvel.com for this issue is very, very simple. Thor faces off against the human Cobra. Real simple. We get a little bit more detail, obviously, when we go through page by page of this issue. Going on in November of this year in Marvel Comics, a few really important issues of Marvel Comics outside of this issue of Journey into Mystery that we are going to go through. We get the second ever issue of the Avengers. So the first issue of Avengers came out in September of 1963, and this second issue comes out 2 months later. It was a bi-monthly release at this point. And in that issue of Avengers, the Earth's Mightiest Heroes face off against a shape-shifting villain called the Space Phantom, who I believe he disguises himself as the Hulk, and they of course, figure out the problem in the end, and they defeat the Space Phantom. Also, this month in Marvel Comics was the second ever issue of the X-Men, was also a bi-monthly book. So the X-Men came out and they fight a villain called the Vanisher in that issue. So 2 very important second issues of comics that people have come to just be their household names now. The Avengers and the X-Men. I mean, really, if you even have a passing knowledge of comics, you probably know who the Avengers are. You probably know who the X-Men are. So 2 early issues of those comics, and then we get a very awesome, I'm going to say one of my favorite Spider-Man villains has his first appearance this month in Amazing Spider-Man number 6. It's the first appearance of Curt Connors, the Lizard. So Curt Connors, if you're unfamiliar with, is a scientist who through chemicals and experimentation on himself, he turns himself into a monster called the Lizard. Kind of a Jekyll and Hyde transformation. He can sometimes be Curt Connors, but at his more stressed and diabolical times, he becomes a monster called the Lizard, and he fights Spider-Man in this month's issue of Amazing Spider-Man. This issue of Journey into Mystery, however, features a first appearance of a villain we've alluded to already, the Human Cobra. The Human Cobra, his real name is Klaus Voorhees, which Voorhees, now that like those of you who know like modern horror movies, Voorhees, definitely not a name you want to mess with. Klaus Voorhees is the name of the Cobra. He receives his powers in this issue similar to the way that Spider-Man receives his powers. He's bitten by a radioactive animal. So he's bitten by a radioactive cobra, and he becomes a human kind of hybrid. He has cobra powers, but he's also still a man, much like Peter Parker when he's bitten by the radioactive spider. The Human Cobra is a recurring villain for Thor in the early issues of his run into Journey into Mystery. We're actually going to see him in, I believe, a few issues. He's going to team up with another early Thor villain, Mr. Hyde, and they're going to do kind of a tag team 2-on-1 adventure with Thor, but that'll be in a few issues. This issue of Journey into Mystery, number 98, was written by Stan Lee, and it was penciled for the first time by Don Heck. So Don Heck has done inking on the Journey into Mystery books, but this is his first time doing penciling, doing the black and white outline of the comics. And I will say this about Don Heck. I've established it pretty clearly that Jack Kirby is one of my favorite Thor illustrators. Don Heck does a really good job of a realistic portrayal of Thor. Thor is very slender in this comic. His face is very detailed, and he's not as large and larger than life in this issue. He's very human. I would say he's very accessible, as opposed to the Jack Lee very verbose and boisterous Thor, which has its place. Obviously, Jack Kirby is a legend in Marvel Comics. If you are new to kind of these older 60s and 70s comics, I would encourage you go back and look at Jack Kirby's artwork. There's a lot of great accounts online that do his art as like daily posts. There's one, if you're an Instagram person, there's one called Jack Kirby Art. So go follow at Jack Kirby Art. They actually do a lot of Thor stuff on there. So Jack Kirby Art, awesome. But Don Heck is illustrating this issue of Thor, and he does a phenomenal job of bringing a very realistic version of Thor to the pages. This is also an issue where we have the Tales of Asgard backup story. Those were drawn by Jack Kirby still, and If you wanted to check out the Tales of Asgard story that is in this issue, we won't break it down today, but if you want to know about the Tales of Asgard story that is covered in this issue of Journey into Mystery, you can go back to our All Father's Day special where myself and my father, Phil, we broke down that issue. It was the first comic we ever read together. It was a lot of fun. So if you want to know more about that, go check out our All Father's Day special, and I think you'll enjoy that. So we see on the cover of Journey into Mystery 98, the human Cobra scaling down a wall, and he is claiming that his powers are too much of a match for Thor. He is too powerful, and Thor is about to learn a lesson from the human Cobra. So the opening page past the cover, we see Thor in Don Blake's office just making a complete mess out of it. He's swinging the hammer around. He's bashing a file cabinet. He is distraught. In the next few pages, we see kind of the fallout of Thor being rejected by Jane, Don Blake being rejected by Jane. Don Blake takes out his anger as Thor, kind of destroys the office a little bit, and he asks Odin again, like, please, just please give me this one thing. It's all I'm asking for. And Odin shuts him down again. Don is super distressed, and he goes back to his office and just decides he needs to get away. He needs to get away from all of this, and he decides he's going to go visit one of his old professors from college in His professor's name is Dr. Schechter. Dr. Schechter is working on research relating to snakes and cobras. It kind of alludes to the villain for the issue, who is actually the assistant of Dr. Schechter. His name, again, is Klaus Voorhees. He is a former criminal who's working for this doctor, which I don't know what the application process is for these doctors, but they tend to pick really bad employees in these early issues of Marvel Comics. And Voorhees has a plan. He is going to steal this research that he's worked really hard on, but Dr. Schechter is getting all the credit for. He wants revenge on him. He thinks that they can do more with this research. So he decides he's going to poison Dr. Schechter, and he's also going to poison himself, but keep the antidote so that it will look like an accident and he won't be incriminated for it. Dr. Schechter's onto him. He's onto his plan, and he is not going to let Voorhees get away with it. We cut away, we see Thor and Don Blake arrive in India, and he hears about Dr. Schechter being killed, or being someone attempting to kill him, and he rushes off to meet him. And Voorhees has already done his dirty work. Schechter is on his deathbed, and he recalls to Thor what happened, and Voorhees tried to kill him and tried to make it look like an accident. Voorhees claims that they could do more with these powers, and he turns himself into the Cobra. And there's a panel in here where he has a costume already ready to go. So he already has this costume ready to go. He already knew he had this plan hatched in enough time to have this costume completely just, good to go. He was onto this a long time ago. So Voorhees gets away, and he goes back to America, where he has more plans to enact. Thor is sad that his college professor has died, but he knows he has to go enact his revenge and get justice for his dead former professor. So he flies back to the United States, and he's able to do that by creating a tornado, a cyclone around him that gets him to the U.S. faster than even the hammer would. And he starts to track down the Cobra. He doesn't make his presence known right away, but he starts to track down the Cobra, and the Cobra is trying to shake down some businessmen to get their factory. He's trying to take over so that he can produce more of this Cobra chemical, so that he can just become more powerful. Kind of early 60s standard bad guy stuff. And Thor breaks it up, and this leads to their fight. The human Cobra tries a few different gadgets. He tries some Cobra darts, the Cobra gas. He's very on theme and on brand with all these different Cobra technologies, but Thor's able to get away from him. He's also He's also tries this Cobra cord, which is like a small rope that's no one can break out of. So Thor is stuck, and the way he gets out of it is he throws the hammer away from him, and he turns back into Don Blake, and Don Blake slips out of the cord, and as the human Cobra is running after him, Don Blake just walks right by him. Thor outthinks this villain by turning back into Don Blake, and then right as he's got the Cobra cornered, he turns back into Thor, and they continue their fight. The Cobra gets a little bit of an upper hand against him, with he opens up a valve on a really powerful pipe, and he's able to smash Thor away, but Thor rebounds real quickly, and the Cobra runs away, and he goes to a doctor's office. But in the past, normally we would assume that it's Don Blake's doctor's office. This time it's Dr. Andrews' office. Dr. Andrews, the one from the previous issue of Journey into Mystery who stole Jane Foster from Don Blake, the human Cobra, goes into their office and he holds them hostage. And up until now, in these comics, Jane has been very critical of Don Blake being a coward. And in this situation, Andrews is also a coward. He puts Jane in front of him. He tries to talk the Cobra out of it. He says, oh, well, I'll give you whatever you need. I'll give you whatever you want. And Jane is the one that goes into action. She grabs a vase off a table and she throws it through the window as Thor is flying by, alerts him that there's something going on in here, and Thor breaks up the hostage situation. Not before the human Cobra still has Jane pinned. He has her in front of him, kind of in that typical like hostage pose that people have, like, don't move or I'll do something to this person. If you really love them, you'll just do what I say. The Cobra is playing one of those tricks on Thor. They go out one of the windows and Thor is chasing after them. He knocks the Cobra off the wall and into a river down below. Jane is falling. Thor catches her and she leaves Dr. Andrews. Everything settles down. The action is done. She leaves Dr. Andrews and goes back to Don Blake and just says, like, hey, I'm sorry, will you take me back? And Don says, of course I will, because Don Blake still loves her. And the last panel of this issue of Journey into Mystery 98, we see the Cobra coming out of the river. So we know we're not done with the Cobra. He's going to come back soon. We get even a little bit of a narrative here that the deeds of the Cobra are not done. What the future holds for mankind and what he holds for Thor. So we get a little bit of an imposing threat at the end of this issue of what the Cobra might be up to next. Journey into Mystery number 98. Really good story. I think the Cobra is a good villain, that he doesn't try to beat Thor with raw power. He's cunning, he's dexterous, he tries to outthink and use his gadgets to win against Thor. Obviously it doesn't happen, but we're going to see the Cobra come back soon. So if you're able to read this comic and you enjoyed this early depiction of the Cobra, you might enjoy the next few issues as well. Or if you're just listening along and you liked the description of the Cobra, we're going to get some more of him in a few issues. So that's Journey into Mystery number 98. That does it for the show today, everybody. I hope you enjoyed issues 97 and 98 of Journey into Mystery. Be sure to come back next week for the next installment in our Throwback Thursday series, where we are going to talk issues 99 and 100 of Journey into Mystery. My wife, Kim, is going to come back for that. We're going to talk about the first appearance of the villain Mr. Hyde in Marvel Comics. Can't wait for that episode. It's going to be a good time. So, But until then, I need you to do a few things for me. I need you to go to iTunes. You need to rate and review the podcast, subscribe so you don't miss any episodes of Across the Bifrost, and then go over to Instagram, follow us at Across the Bifrost, and talk to us about Thor comics. What have you enjoyed about our Throwback Thursday series up until now? We want to hear what you're enjoying about the show. So reach out to us there. We would love to chat with you. Don't forget, on Monday, we are doing a big Loki extravaganza. We're bringing back all of our reviewers to talk about the entire first season of Loki. Check it out. And if you want to be a part of the show, go to the link in this episode description and leave us a voice message. We would love to hear what you thought about the first season of Loki. So be a part of the show. Go to the link in the episode description. Do that. We would love to see you on that episode this Monday. So until then, have a great rest of your day, everybody. I hope you're having an awesome, spectacular day wherever you are in the 9 realms. We cannot wait for the next time that you jump aboard the Rainbow Bridge with us. Until then, stay worthy.